Okay, before we dive into the secrets of the pentatonic scale and look at ways of coming up with the modes, I think it's probably reasonably important for me to actually show you the scale. I know that some of you may want to fast forward this section of the DVD, but if I were you, I'd stick around for a little bit. You might pick up some new ideas for practicing the scale and making sure that you can apply it all over the neck. Well, I'm going to look at all of the examples through the first section of this DVD anyway in the key of C. So basically we're going to be using C as our root note to play either minor pentatonics from or major pentatonics. All of the chord examples as well, when I'm playing different pentatonics, basically what's known as superimposing a pentatonic over a chord, the chord will always be from a C root note. So it's either going to be a C major 7th, which that chord is the 8th fret of the bottom E, 9th fret of the D, 9th fret of the G, and 8th fret of the B. Or a dominant 7th, it's a C dominant 7th. I play 8th fret of the bottom E, 8th fret of the D, 9th fret of the G, 8th fret of the B. Okay, so all you've done is take the major 7th and dropped it down by a semitone. A minor 7th, which is just the way I like to play the minor 7th, is a very tight sounding chord voicing, which is right across the 8th fret. So 8th fret at the bottom E, mute the A, and then play the 8th fret D, G, and B. And then the next chord would be the minor 7 flat 5 chord, which granted isn't probably a chord that you would play that often in your covers band, but like I said in the introduction, this is a way that you can explore other avenues and possibly explore different styles of music, but not have to learn, tons and tons of new scale shapes. So the minor 7 flat 5 chord, and for that I'm playing 8th fret bottom E, 8th fret D and G, and then 7th fret B. It's also referred to as the half diminished chord. Also some altered chords as well, things like the dominant 7th chord with the sharp 5. That's quite a tense sounding chord. That chord there I'm playing 8th fret bottom E, 8th fret D, and then 9th fret G, and 9th fret of the B string. So you often use those as passing chords in a blues or in jazz, and also sometimes in rock. And also probably the most famous altered chord, which is the 7 sharp 9. Probably a lot of you know that voicing. It's the Jimi Hendrix voicing, which is 2 on the D, 3 on the A, 3 on the G, and 4 on the B. But you can also play it based off of an E shape. If you bar right across the 8th fret, play the 10th fret of the D string, 10th fret of the A string, but mute the D string, play 9th fret G, and then bar your little finger across the 11th fret of the top 2 strings. And that will give you the same chord, but just with a different voicing. So those are all of the chords that we're going to be basing our work around, and when I'm playing different pentatonics, it will be either a major 7th, a dominant 7th, a minor 7th, an altered, or a minor 7 flat 5. Okay, so let's start off by taking a look at C minor pentatonic. I've chosen C basically because whenever I see tutorial material on the pentatonic, it's always in A, and I just wanted to be maybe a little bit risque and break the mold a little bit and do something a bit different. When you're learning a scale, I think it's really important for you to learn a scale in every single key. I always liken it to a mechanic trying to fix your car, and they know what that bit of the engine is, but that bit over there they're a little bit sketchy about. You wouldn't really feel that you trust them in that environment. And the same thing when it comes to playing your guitar. You don't want to just be really familiar with one part. Oh, I know that bit, but if something comes up where I've got to play somewhere else, I might shy away from it. It's the same thing to me. Music to me also is a language. It's a way of communicating with people, and I think if you're going to communicate with them, you need to understand how to speak the language and be able to put the words into musical sentences. And I treat that as being the scales that I play and the notes that make up the scales. That's the way that I communicate with my audience, and how countless guitar players and musicians communicate with their audience. So it's really important to have that vocabulary down under your fingers when you're looking at the fingerboard. Anyway, The pentatonic scale itself is a 5-note scale, and it's possibly one of the most used and in some ways the most simplest scales of all. It's a very, very familiar box shape that many of us learn as being the first scale that we play on the electric guitar. So in the key of C, we're going to be starting off on the 8th fret of the bottom E. Then we're going to play the 11th fret of the bottom E. Then we're going to play the 8 and 10 on the A string. Same on the D string. Same on the G string. Then we're going to play 8 and 11 on the B. And 8 and 11 on the top E. Let's put those together. The root notes of this scale are situated on the 8th fret of the bottom E, 10th fret D, 8th fret top E. And the formula also for that scale, it's a root note, a minor third, so that's a tone and a half higher, a fourth, a fifth, and a minor seventh. So in terms of being related to a chord, it's incredibly closely related to the minor seventh chord. The only note that's missing is the fourth. So then what we do is we basically play each one of those notes of the scale on the bottom string and treat it as a starting point to play through the rest of the notes. So whereas we started on C, our next note was E flat, our next scale shape will actually start from E flat. So we're going to play the 11th fret and 13th fret at the bottom E, the 10 and 13 of the A, same on the D, 10 and 12 on the G, then 11 and 13 on the B, and 11 and 13 on the top E. The root notes are situated on the B string at the 13th and the D string at the 10th. So that scale, if I start on the root and then play from the lowest note, I can mix that in with my previous shape. So you get a nice area of the neck now covered. The next shape after that, we start now on the note of F. As you recall, I'm starting from each note of the scale. So we've done C, we've done E flat, now we're starting from F. And for this shape, we play 13 and 15 on the bottom E. Same on the A, same on the D, 12 and 15 on the G, 13, 16 on the B, 13, 15 on the top E, and our root notes are situated on the 13th fret of the B and the 15th fret of the A. So if I start from the lowest root note and play through the scale, it will sound like this. Okay, our next shape starts off from the G note. And I'm playing this quite far up the neck now, and obviously I could drop that down and play it at the 3rd fret, but we're going to continue up the neck. And the frets are 15 and 18. Same again on the next string. Then 15 and 17 on the D. Same on the G. And then on the B string we're playing 16 and 18. And then 15 and 18 on the top E. Our root notes are on the 15th fret A and the 17th fret G. Okay, so starting from the lowest root. Okay, our next shape, I'm going to change position now, start from the B flat note, and you could continue up here. This makes life a little easier. And this shape starts off on the 6th fret at the bottom E, 6 and 8, same on the A, 7 and 8 on the D, same on the G, and then 6 and 8 on the B, and 6 and 8. Root notes are on the 8th fret, bottom and top E, and also on the 5th fret of the G, so you get this. So what you'll wind up with if you practice this across the whole of the fingerboard is the entire neck covered in C minor pentatonic scales, basically. So in the open position, okay, that was shape 4. Sorry, shape 3, now shape 4. Shape 5. Shape 1. Shape 2. Shape 3. Shape 4. Shape 5. And at that point I've run out of frets to be able to play the next shape, shape 1 again. So you can see the whole fingerboard has now been covered. Another way to relate these scales, if you like, especially if you're playing, as you'll see later on in this DVD, when you're playing other keys over the top of the chord. Just to give you an example, I won't go into the theory of it at the moment, but say I'm playing a C minor 7th chord, but instead of playing C minor pentatonic, which sounds a little predictable, sounds good, but it's, you know, that normal thing that we're used to hearing. Say I want to play a G minor pentatonic, which I will explain why that works later on, but say I want to play G minor, I can actually visualise a G minor chord shape there. And then I have a scale based around that. But then I can actually play that over the top of my C minor chord. So this would be the G minor pentatonic over the C minor chord. You see it's added quite a fresh sound, but instead of moving that shape 1 way up the neck, I can actually see a scale shape based around the nearest possible G minor chord. So if any of you have seen any of my other instructional DVDs, namely my Fretboard Navigator DVDs, you'll know that I really go into one about the cage system. And for me, it's just the most logical way of learning and playing the guitar. I see 5 chords, I see 5 major scales, I see 5 pentatonic scales, I see 5 modes, I see 5 arpeggios. And for me personally, sometimes I can be the most studious guitar player there is and sit down with books and DVDs and CDs and learn new material. And other times I just want to play. And for me, it got to the point where I could actually, you know, play a lot of different styles and improvise, you know, pretty successfully just using these 5 scale shapes. Obviously now I've kind of learnt other approaches, but I still always go back to that one approach of seeing the chord, seeing the scale. At the end of the day, when you're improvising, you know, you want to be landing on chord tones and playing melodies based around the strong notes of the chord. So to me, it kind of makes sense to, you know, see the chord, see the scale, see the arpeggio. So when you're practicing these scale shapes, if we go back to shape number 1 of C minor, the root notes are on the bottom E, top E, and D string. And the chord shape that I see around that is the E minor 7th shape. So I'm barring across the 8th fret and I'm playing the 10th fret of the A string. It's an E minor 7th shape, but the root note is C, so it's a C minor 7th chord. Now, say for instance I wanted to play in another key, let's say the key of F sharp minor. I would move that shape so that the root note became F sharp. There's my chord, and there's my pentatonic scale. So as soon as I see that chord shape anywhere, I've got this pentatonic shape that starts from the same root notes and is based around it. The next shape then, shape 2, which had its root note on the D string at the 10th and on the B string at the 13th. I use the D minor movable chord shape. A little bit of a squash, this one. We're barring across from the 10th fret of the D. We play the 11th fret of the B and the G, B and the top E, sorry, and then we play the 12th fret of the G. So you can hear that that's a C minor chord, or C minor 7th chord, but I'm using the D minor shape from the cage system. So whenever I play that chord, I can play it here. Here it's in G minor. Here's my scale. I automatically play the correct scale shape from the same root note of that chord shape. So far we've got C minor 7th using an E shape, using a D shape. Okay, the next one uses the C shape, and there's various different fingerings for this. There's the more traditional one, which is just the most hideous stretch, like so, which I'd never like to play, but I'll give you that shape anyway. That's 15 on the A string, 13 on the D, 12 on the G, and 11 on the top two strings. It's that. It's kind of a stretch. You can play this voicing, which is 15 on the A and the G and 13 on the D and the B. Or you could play this voicing, which is my preferred voicing, which is 15 on the A, 13 on the D, 15 on the G and 16 on the B. And what I quite like to do in more of a rock context is actually not play the D string and mute it. So you get a 3-note chord. There's your root, minor 7th, minor 3rd. So it's got all of the important notes. It's a nice sounding chord voicing that for playing a minor 7th. So that's my chord shape that I then have my shape number 3 of the minor pentatonic. Okay, I'm going to move down the neck now, and the next shape is the A shape, the A minor 7th shape. I'm barring from the 3rd fret A, playing the 4th fret of the B, and I'm playing the 5th fret of the D. Okay, that's an A minor shape of a C minor chord, and shape number 4 fits around this. So, chord shape. Scale shape. Again, anywhere that I play that chord in any key, I will play shape number 4 of the minor pentatonic from it. And my final shape is the G minor 7th shape, which I mentioned this one earlier on. I'm basically barring across the 8th fret of the D, G and B, and then playing the 8th fret of the bottom E. I mute the A, I don't play the top E. And for that chord shape, I play pentatonic shape number 5. And there you have all of your minor pentatonic scales based around the minor 7th chords. Okay, we've looked at our minor pentatonic scales. Now we're going to take a look at the major pentatonic scales, because we also need these. And guess what? Exactly the same set of shapes, which makes it really nice and easy. I'm quite proud of the fact that this DVD is just based around 5 scale shapes. I think it's a really, really nice concept. But then that does raise the question, is the pentatonic scale the crutch for the lazy guitar player? I've had that discussion many times when teaching students. It can be, but obviously from some of the material that we're looking at today, hopefully it will inspire you to push your standard licks in another direction. Anyway, as I just mentioned, we're using exactly the same scale shapes. All we do is start from a different point, and each time the major pentatonics are just one shape out from the minor pentatonics. If you recall, this was shape 1 of the minor pentatonic. Shape 2 of C minor started from this note, the E flat note. So that was this scale shape. Now if we take that shape number 2 of the minor pentatonic and move it down by what's referred to as a minor 3rd interval, which is a tone, and a half, we're now actually starting on the note of C. Now what we're going to do, instead of treating the note on the D string with our first finger that was the root note of the minor pentatonic, we're going to treat this first note as our root note. So you're effectively playing shape number 2 of the minor pentatonic, moving it down by a minor third and treating the first note as the root note. And that is the root or position or pattern number 1 of the major pentatonic. So you can see how it's one shape out. Shape 1 of the minor pentatonic becomes shape 5 of the major pentatonic, and so on. So here is our major pentatonic scale. If that's a little bit much to take in, don't worry too much about it. If you spend some time with the first section of the DVD looking at the minor scales, the minor pentatonics, now start studying the major pentatonics, you will see that it's exactly the same shapes. You're just moving them and starting from a different root note. So here's C major pentatonic. We're playing 8 to 10 on the bottom E. And we're playing 7 to 10 on the G. 7-10 on the D, 7-9 on the G, 8-10 on the B, and we're playing 8-10 on the top E. So keen viewers will probably notice that that is in fact the second shape of the A minor pentatonic. In music theory, you have a relative major and a relative minor. C major is the relative major of A minor. That's why it's exactly the same scale. But we'll leave that for the moment. So here's C major. I can play this over a C major 7th chord. I can also play it over a C dominant chord. Get a nice bluesy. It sounds really, really sweet over the top of the dominant chord. Okay, we then take the next shape, which is shape number 3 of the minor pentatonic, but it is in fact shape number 2 of the major pentatonic. And here are the fret positions: 10, 12 on the bottom E, same on the D, on the A string, same on the D, 9 and 12 on the G, 10 and 13 on the B, and 10 and 12 on the top E. The root notes are on the D string at the 10th fret and the B string at the 13th fret. So if I start from the lowest root note and drop to the lowest note in the scale and ascend and descend, it sounds like this. Okay, and that works over major 7th. Or it works over dominant 7th. You can hear both chord types work really well with the scale. Okay, we're going to move on to shape number 3 of the C major pentatonic, which, you've guessed it, is the same as shape number 4 of the minor pentatonic, but we just start from a different point. Here's the fingering. We're playing 12 to 15 on the bottom E, 12 to 15 on the A, 12 to 14 on the D, 12 to 14 on the G, 13, 15 on the B, and 12 to 15 on the top E. Our root notes are on the 13th fret B and on the 15th fret A. Okay, here's the scale shape, starting from the lowest root, dropping down to the lowest note of the scale, ascending and then descending. Okay, our next shape is shape number 4 of the major pentatonic, which is the same as shape number 5 of the minor pentatonic. I'm going to change position now when I play this scale for you. We could actually play it up here at the 15th and the 17th, but I'm going to play it at the 3rd and the 5th. Okay, here's the fingering. 3, 5 on the E, 3, 5 on the A, 2, 5 on the D, 2, 5 on the G, 3, 5 on the B, and 3, 5 on the top E. Root notes are situated on the 5th fret G, 3rd fret of the A. So here we go, root note, down to the lowest note, ascend and descend. You should be getting the hang of this by now. Here's my chord. Okay, here's our next shape, which is shape number 5 of the major pentatonic, which is the easy one because it's the same as shape number 1 of the minor. And it's basically A minor pentatonic, starting from that C note. You'll recognise this shape very easily. We play 5 and 8 on the bottom E, 5, 7 on the A, 5, 7 on the D, 5, 7 on the G, 5, 8 on the B, and 5, 8 on the top E. Okay, from the root note. Okay, I'm now going to play through all of the C major pentatonic across the whole of the fingerboard. So starting from the lowest position, we're actually going to start from shape number 3 of the scale. So we get this. Next shape. Next shape. Root position. Next shape. Next shape. We're back to where we started, but an octave higher. You can see the whole fingerboard is now covered in C major and obviously C minor. Just a point about the chords. Shape number 1 of the C major pentatonic works around our C major 7th chord, which I showed you that one earlier on. 8th fret on the bottom E, 9 on the D and the G, and 8 on the B string. Or we could play the dominant 7th, that will also work with this scale. 8 on the bottom E, 8 on the D, 9 on the G, 8 on the B. The next one based around the D shape, so that could be the D major 7th shape of C major 7th, 10th fret of the D, and then 12 across the top 3. Dominant 7th, 10 on the D, 12 on the G, 11 on the B, 12 on the top E, like so. Next one is around the C shape, so C major 7th, do it in open position actually, or movable. That would be just a regular C chord with the first finger missing, playing an open B, or that would be 15 on the A, 14 on the D, and then bar across 12 on the G, B and E. Dominant 7th, you just add in the B flat, so play a regular C chord in the open position, add your little finger on the 3rd fret G, and move that up so the root's on the 15th fret of the A string. Okay, the next one is going to be C major 7th around an A shape, bar across the 3rd fret, play from the A string that is, play 5th fret D, 4th fret G, 5th fret B. Get rid of your 2nd finger, that gives you dominant 7th. Okay, the next chord shape is a little bit of a mystery. I've seen many different ways of this being played. This is a G major 7th voicing of a C, basically, a C major 7th, but it's the G major 7th movable shape. It's always a bit of a nasty one, this. You can play it like so, just basically barring across the 5th fret of the D string, G and B, adding your little finger on the major 7th, the B note on the top E at the 7th. Your bass player would be playing that note, so it would complete the sound of the chord. So you're only playing a fragment of it. You can also play this, where I'm playing 10 on the D, 9 on the G, 8 on the B, 7 on the top E, and my thumb plays the root on the bottom E at the 8th. There's that version. Or there's this rather unusual version that I really like, which is that, which is an inversion of the chord. The root actually comes from there, but I just think it's kind of a nicer version of playing that G voicing. So I play 7th fret of the A, which is my root, my 3rd, sorry, there's my major 7th, the B note on the 9th fret of the D. There's my root on the G at the 5th, and then there's my 5th, the note of G on the B string at the 8th. I think that's kind of a sweet sounding chord. And then the dominant 7th version, you can bar across the 5th fret from the D, G and B, and then add your little finger on the 6th fret of the top E. But you can also then add the 7th fret of the A string and also the 8th fret at the bottom E. That gives you a more traditional kind of voicing of a G7 shape. Remember, we're playing it in C. And there's also this shape, which is a bit of a stretch, where I'm playing 10 on the A, 9 on the G, 8 on the B, 6 on the top E. So there's a few voicings there for the G movable shapes. So make sure you spend some time practicing those. I would basically play minor chord, root minor, and then dominant or major 7th, and play root major. And then gradually move through each one. After that, I would make sure that you practice these in as many keys as you possibly can. We will look at ways of practicing them diatonically in a moment, which basically means pentatonics within the same key. But I work through a system which, again, I've mentioned before on my Fretboard Navigator DVD, so if you're interested in this route of practice, make sure you check that out. It's basically going through a cycle, a key cycle, a cycle of fourths, which enables you to practice melodically through, starting from one point and going all the way through all 12 keys. The order of this is C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, and then you're back to C. That was all 12 keys, and I would use those chord shapes as the basis for my major pentatonics. I would then practice them as minors and use them as a basis for my minor pentatonics. But like I said, more on that, make sure you check out my Fretboard Navigator DVDs. Okay, now we've looked at the scales, both major and minor pentatonic, it's time for us to do a little bit of theory, I'm afraid. You're not going to get away with doing absolutely no theory whatsoever. We have to basically be able to look at the different modes that are found within the major scale, and also the pentatonic scales that can be found within the major scale, and also the harmony, the chords that can be built from the scale. I'm going to base this all around C major for the moment, and then we will treat C as our root when we look at each mode. So we'll be effectively changing key every time we play a new mode, but it just so that you can relate the different intervals that create the characteristics of the mode to the same root note each time. Basically, our major scale is a 7-note scale, which we should all be pretty familiar with the sound of. There's our scale, which we're used to hearing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now each one of those notes can be a potential root note for a chord or a triad, and also for a new mode or scale. We still continue to use exactly the same set of 7 notes, but by starting from a new point, we create a new set of intervals. So if we look at each note and play thirds above using all of the notes that are diatonic to C, so that's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, our 7 notes. If we go every other note basically from each note, so from C that would be C, E and G. That gives us a C major triad, which in its basic form is that, but then we double the notes up to form a full voicing, a full chord. So there's our C major chord. That'll be chord 1. If we start from note number 2 of the C major scale and play up in thirds, we get D, F and A. Play those notes together. That gives us a D minor triad. Start from the note of E. We get E, or there. We get G, and we get B, which gives us E minor. Now start from the note of F. We get F, A and C, which gives us F major. From G, we get G, B, and D, which gives us G major. From A, we get A, C, and E, which gives us A minor. And if we start from B, we get B, D, and F, which gives us our B diminished chord, which is the 7th chord. So if I play through all of those chords, you can hear the scale. Get this in your head. Our major scale, then you can hear the scale moving diatonically up in thirds. So those are the chords that are constructed from within the scale. Now, from each one of those chords, we can actually build a pentatonic scale as well, using notes within C major. We've got 3 major chords there, C, F, and G major, and we have 3 minor chords, which are D minor, E minor, and A minor. And from each one of those root notes, we can construct a minor pentatonic scale. So in the key of C major, that's going to be the C major pentatonic. It's going to be the F major pentatonic, which sounds like so. And the G major pentatonic. All of those pentatonics used notes from the C major scale, from C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We're just using different combinations of those notes from either note number 1, note number 4, note number 5. So they work alongside each of the chords, and they also eventually will work along each side of the modes as well. Okay, let's look at the minor chords now. The minor chords with D minor, and we can produce a minor pentatonic from that. So our D minor pentatonic sounds like this. Our E minor pentatonic. And our A minor pentatonic. Okay, earlier on I mentioned about relative major and minors. Well, basically that's coming into play here. We've got C major pentatonic and A minor. They're exactly the same scale, you're just starting from a different point. We've got F major pentatonic, which is the same as D minor, and we've got G major pentatonic, which is the same as E minor. So although it appears that we have 6 pentatonic scales within our one key, in theory we do, but it's actually only 3 pentatonics. You're just starting from either one root note or another root note to make them either major or minor. So those are the pentatonics that are found. Now, to be able to use this technique effectively, it's really important for you to actually understand the modes and the sound of the modes. I'm not saying that you should be able to play them. It's entirely up to you whether you go that far or whether you just stick to using pentatonics. The thing about using the pentatonics modally is the fact that because of the makeup, the structure of the pentatonic scale, it's not quite as obvious when you're playing it, when you're substituting one pentatonic for another in a modal sense. When we play modes, we tend to play, our 3-note per string or cage shapes, and we play one note after another, playing through a run, which is very stereotypical. But I can still imply the sound of that mode with all the important notes using a pentatonic, but where it's only a 5-note scale, certain notes will be missing. So intervallically, it's slightly more interesting and a little unusual as well. Anyway, let's take a look at each mode, but we're going to do this all from the C root note. Okay, so we're going to be changing each key every time we play, changing key every time we play a new mode, should I say. So the first one then will just be C major or C Ionian. Fairly straightforward. Okay, you should be used to hearing that scale by now. If we start from the 2nd note of the major scale and treat that as a root note, that works with triad number 2, which is the minor triad. And you get this series of intervals. You get a root, a second, a flat third, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. That's the important note, and a flat seven. Now that is called the Dorian mode, and basically the characteristic of a Dorian mode is the fact that it's a minor scale, but it has a major sixth in it. It's a very, very hip sounding scale, works great in blues, in rock, and also jazz and fusion as well. So this is the sound of the whole mode. Hear it there? Okay, if we treat our C note now as the third of a scale, we would get mode number 3, which is also a minor mode, fits around the minor pentatonic starting from the same root. It also fits around the minor chord starting from the same root. But if we start from the third note of the scale, we get a completely different set of intervals. So again, I'm doing it all from the note of C, so this isn't diatonic. We're changing key every time, but you can hear, you know, if I play a Dorian mode. Now compare it to a Phrygian mode. It's a very good way for you to compare the sounds if we start from the same root every time. So the Phrygian mode, the third mode, the characteristics of this mode, it's quite an exotic sounding scale. It's actually, sounds very Spanish. The intervals are from the root, a flat 2, so it's quite dark and sinister sounding, a minor third, a fourth, a fifth, and a flat 6th. And then the minor 7th and the root. See, if you compare that to the formula of Dorian, Dorian had a major 6th and a major 2nd, whereas this scale has a flat 2nd and a flat 6th. Here's Dorian. Quite fresh sounding. Now let's hear Phrygian from the same root. It's very dark sounding. You can really hear the difference between the two. Okay, the next mode would be a major mode, starting from the 4th note, and that would be the Lydian mode, and that would fit with the major pentatonic built from the 4th degree. It would fit with the major chord built from the 4th degree as well, which I should also mention about 7th chord extensions at this point. Chords 1 and 4 are major 7th. Chord 5, even though it's major chord, it's a dominant 7th chord, which means it's a major chord with a minor 7th note in it. So whereas major 7ths sound like so, dominant 7ths have a slightly bluesier tonality to them. So let's take a look at the Lydian mode. So this would be if C was the fourth of G in fact, and if you start from the 4th note of the major scale, you get this series of intervals. You get a root, a second, a third, a sharp 4, okay, it's quite a tense sounding note, a 5th, 6th, major 7th, root. Compare that to the major scale. Here's Ionian. Here's Lydian. It's quite an ethereal kind of sounding mode. Probably one of the best ways to describe it is think of a science fiction movie. The amount of times I'll see a film and a big spaceship flies in over the head and there's some kind of chord progression going on, and it's Lydian. Various famous fantasy films use this particular scale in their progressions and in their melodies as well. It has that kind of, because of the sharp 4, that tritone interval, it's quite an unresolved sound. Okay, our next mode would be starting from the 5th degree of the scale, and this mode would be Mixolydian. Now this is a major scale, but it has a minor 7th. This is why it works with the dominant chord. Okay, here's the mode. So root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, flat 7 root. Okay, compare the 3 major modes together. Ionian or major. Okay, Lydian, mode 4. Now Mixolydian, mode 5. See, characteristically, they're all very, very different. Our next minor mode is the relative minor, or the Aeolian mode. This is built from the 6th note. So if we start from the 6th note of any major scale, continue up, treating that as the root, it fits with the 6th chord or triad, which would be minor, and it will also fit with the minor pentatonic built from that same degree. And the intervals in this scale are root, second, minor third, fourth, fifth, flat 6, flat 7, root. So there's the scale. Okay, compare it with Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian. It's very closely related to, well, to both scales. You could look at it as being, if you flatten the second, you'd get Phrygian, or if you raise the sixth, you'd get Dorian. Our final mode is the leading note or leading chord, which is mode 7, and this is the Locrian mode. This is a very, very tense sounding scale. It works over a diminished chord or a minor 7 flat 5 chord. If you start from the 7th degree of the major scale, you get this series of intervals: root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, root. Okay, so here's the mode. Okay, from that you should be able to appreciate the qualities and the characteristics of each scale. So just one more time, the 3 major scales: Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian. Okay, our 3 minor modes: Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian. And our final mode, Locrian. Okay, so all of those modes can be found within one key. If I played diatonically in the key of C, we've looked at the chords, which were C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, C major. If we played the modes, we would get C Ionian, from the second, D Dorian, third, E Phrygian, fourth would be F Lydian, fifth, G Mixolydian, sixth, A Aeolian, seventh, D Locrian, and then back to C major. Okay, now that we've taken a look at the modes and a little bit of a brief modal lesson there, but at least you can maybe appreciate some of the sounds that can be created by the modes. Now, as a rule, whenever we play over a chord, when we see a minor chord, we pretty much would play the minor pentatonic based around the same root and that note of that chord. So if I played a C minor chord, for instance, a C minor 7th chord, I would in fact be using the C minor pentatonic, which is completely acceptable and a very, very common soloing and improvising tool. But depending on the position of that chord within the major scale or the parent scale will determine what other pentatonics we can use to give us different sounds, different modal qualities. For instance, if that was chord 2 from the key of B flat, we could also use the minor pentatonic based from the 3rd degree, which would be the D minor pentatonic scale, and we could also use the minor pentatonic that's based from the 6th degree of the major scale, which would be G minor pentatonic. So even though we're playing that chord, we could actually use this scale, and we could also use this scale as well. Okay, now that technique is referred to as pentatonic substitution, and where, depending on the position of the chord within the parent scale would depend on and decide what other pentatonic scales that you can use over the top. Say, for instance, I was treating C minor as chord number 3, that would be coming from A flat. I could actually use the C minor pentatonic. I could also use the B flat, resolving back to C, and I could also use the F minor pentatonic, which is a 4th above. Okay, so it's really important for you to understand the role of the chord and its position within the major scale itself. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to put that technique into practice and look at some formulas which can enable you to use your pentatonics modally to produce the sound of the modes, but just stick within these familiar finger patterns. Another really cool thing that you can do is if you're playing a lick, your favourite lick based around one shape, you could then move it, keeping the same shape but move the key of the pentatonic. You'll be using this pentatonic substitution technique, and you'll also be getting double the money for one lick. So it's a really, really good technique to have down. What we're going to do is play one short little musical phrase, kind of a lick, more of an exercise than anything. And then I'm going to play it using several different pentatonics but over the same chord. And what you'll result in is a series of formulas that will enable you to look at a chord, either play a major or minor pentatonic from the root, depending on what chord type you're playing over, and then imply different modal qualities by simply shifting to a new pentatonic scale over the top of the original chord. Okay, what we're going to do first of all is look at the phrase. I'm going to play this around shape number 5 of the major pentatonic, or shape 1 of the minor pentatonic. Here's our little phrase. It starts off on the last 2 16th notes of a bar, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we've just played 5 to 7 there on the D string. Now we're going to play 5 on the G, and then 7-5 on the G and 7-5 on the D. 5 to 7 on the G, 5-8 on the B, 5 on the top E, 8-5 on the B, and 7 on the G. So the lick so far, 3, 4. Then we simply descend through the scale with a little sequence. So that's 8 to 5 on the top E, and then 8-5 on the B, 5 on the top E, 8-5 on the B, 7 on the G, 8-5 on the B, 7-5 on the G, 7 on the D, and then 7-5 on the G, 7-5 on the D, 7-5 on the A, 8-5 on the E, and then back to 8. So those are the last 2 bars. Okay, put the whole little phrase together. Now musically, that's not a particularly inspiring lick, but what I want you to be able to see is how I can play that lick in one position, implying, say, C major, for instance. Here's the C major chord, but I can play that lick around C major pentatonic. It sounds very C major, but then we can simply shift to a relative pentatonic from within that key and imply a completely different set of intervals over the chord, which will result in a completely different sounding lick, but we will still, in essence, be playing exactly the same phrase. So that first little phrase that I played was based around C major, and that will work over Ionian, it will work over Lydian, and it will also work over Mixolydian as well. So here's the lick based around the C major 7th chord, which is based off of degree number 1 of the major scale or chord degree number 4, giving it either Ionian or Lydian. So here's C major 7th. and here's the lick. And you can hear that it sounds perfectly at home. It will also work over the top of the dominant 7th chord. Works perfectly. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate that phrase against the click track with a chord. I'm going to first of all play it over the major 7th chord for you, and then I'm going to demonstrate it over the dominant 7th so that you can really appreciate the sound of the scale and the intervals that are being created against either a major 7th or a dominant 7th. I'd like to just point out actually from the root note of the major pentatonic, we start off with the note of G, which is a 5th, up to A, which is a 6th. There's our root, our 2nd, root, 6th, 5th, up to E, which is the 3rd, G, which is the 5th. So it's all of those notes that I'm playing are very, very strong notes against either major 7th or dominant 7th, because we've got lots of roots, we got 3rds, and we got 5ths as well. Okay, moving on, let's now take a look at our first and rather exciting little bit of pentatonic substitution. I'm going to be looking at chords 1 and chord 4 now, which is basically they're both major 7ths, so they will either imply the, they work over the top of the major scale or the Lydian scale. Okay, now diatonically, basically we can move a 5th above our chord, which is going to be the key of G, and we can play a G major pentatonic scale now over the top. If we look at C in relationship to its parent scale, C Ionian, the G chord is the 5 chord, so we can build a major pentatonic from that. If we look at C major 7th as the 4 chord of G major, which makes it Lydian, G major is the 1 chord, and we can build a pentatonic off of that. So both scales are relative to the G major pentatonic as well. If we play a G major pentatonic scale, we have these intervals. G is obviously the root of G, but if we hear it against that chord, it's actually a 5th. A is a 6th, B is a major 7th, D is a 9, E is our major 3rd, and then G is our 5th. So you can hear, if I play that chord, and it's a very, very nice sound. It's quite a fresh sound because of the fact it's got the 9th in it and the major 7th. It doesn't actually have a C note, which is the root, so we would land on another chord tone such as E or G. Okay, I'm going to take our little lick that we learnt, because we're playing exactly the same scale shape, except we're moving it up here to the 12th fret, and I'm going to play the same lick for you. So remember, our C major pentatonic shape 5 was 8 on the E, 5, 7 on the A, 5, 7 on the D, 5, 7 on the G, 5, 8 on the B, 5, 8 on the top E. If we move that up to G, here's the same scale shape, but obviously in the key of G now. 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 15, 12, 15. There's our G major pentatonic. So our lick would actually wind up like this. It's exactly the same phrase, but it's just been transposed up a 5th. So we're going... recognise it. The structure and the formula of the lick is the same, we've just shifted the position. So that's going to be the 12, starting on the 12 to the 14 on the D, play 12 on the G, and then pull off 14, 12 on the G, 14, 12 on the D. Now play 12, 14 on the G, 12, 15 on the B, 12 on the top E, and then pull off 15, 12 on the B, and then 14 on the G. So now sequence down through the pentatonic. Exactly the same closing phrase, except starting from the 15th fret. So 15, 12, and then 15, 12, 12 on the top E, 15, 12 on the B, 14 on the G, 15, 12 on the B, 14, 12 on the G, and then 12 on the B, 14, 12 on the G, 14 on the D. So we now just, so that's 14, 12 on the G, 14, 12 on the D, 14, 12 on the A, 15, 12 on the E, and then back up to the 15. So over the top of our C major 7th, whereas before we had it's the same lick in G, but over the C chord. And you can hear that it's all of a sudden that very kind of stereotypical sounding lick has a very fresh sound to it because of the fact that playing a G major pentatonic over the top of the C major 7th chord has a different group of intervals, but structurally it's the same. We can get away with playing exactly the same lick and just simply shifting it up. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate that little bit of pentatonic substitution for you. Just play that little run over the top of a C major chord against a C major 7th chord against the click. So this is the G major pentatonic over the C major 7th chord, which can be used against chord 1 or chord 4. So works against any Lydian or Ionian chord progressions. Okay, here's our next major pentatonic. I just want to actually, before I go any further, just give you a few formulas. So, so far we've looked at chords based around Ionian, Lydian or Mixolydian, and we can play a major pentatonic from the root of each one of those chords. So that's completely standard stuff, and that's what most people would do with their major pentatonic. Now if we're playing over chord 4 or chord 1, to just spice up the sound a little bit, take the lick that you were playing on the root pentatonic, so if it was C major 7, take any licks around that pentatonic, that C major pentatonic, and simply shift it up a 5th and play it over G major pentatonic, but still, you're still playing the C major 7th chord. So for a Lydian, or Ionian, but with a little bit of a kind of fresh flavour to it, move the major pentatonic up by a 5th from the root. So from C, play licks based around G major pentatonic. Okay, this next idea gives you a specifically Lydian sound, and there's two ways of looking at this. You can either look at your major 7th chord and play a minor pentatonic a semitone lower, which is shape 1, or you can think of it as being, there's C major, play a major pentatonic a whole tone above. It's exactly the same shape. Here's the scale shape that we're using. It's 7-10 on the bottom E, 7-9 on the A, 7-9 on the D, 7-9 on the G, 7-10 on the B, 7-10 on the top E. So against that major pentatonic, we're actually playing D major pentatonic against the C major 7th chord. And if you think about it in terms of the position of the chord in the harmonised scale, the Lydian chord is chord 4, the Mixolydian chord, which is also major, or dominant, is from chord 5, which is a whole tone above. So we can play a major pentatonic from the root of the chord, or we can play a major pentatonic from the second of the chord, which is D, so a whole tone above. And you can hear that that gives it a very, very, very Lydian sound. So a really, really nice approach. I prefer to look at it as just, there's my major 7th chord, drop the root down a semitone and play a minor pentatonic. It's just a little bit easier for me to think that way, but you could also look at it as being major pentatonic a whole tone above. Okay, let's look at these notes in relationship to C major 7th. We've got B, which is a major 7th, D, which is a 9, E, which is a major 3rd, but then we've got F sharp, and that's the tritone. That's our sharp 4. Okay, we've got A, which is the 6th, and then back to B. So we've got some chord tones in there. We've got an E in there, and we've also got our major 7th in there, but we've also got the second as well, which gives it a very, very, very kind of hip, kind of nice open sort of sound. I love the sound of the second. It's you know, it's not as stable note as the third, but it really adds a nice flavour to your improvising. So once again, I'm just going to take our simple little lick that we played so far in C major and G major pentatonic. I'm now going to play this in D major pentatonic, or B minor, depending on how you look at it. And the lick, you should be starting to get the hang of this little phrase. There's our chord, and here's the lick. Now when I finish it, I probably wouldn't sit on that note. Sounds okay, sounds actually quite nice, but I'd probably just drop down and resolve to the C note because it kind of brings the lick home a little bit more. So the phrase itself was going 7, 9 on the D, 7 on the G, then 9, 7 on the G, 9, 7 on the D, and then 7, 9 on the G, 7, 10 on the B, 7 on the top E, 10, 7 on the B, 9 on the G, and then we just cascade down through a little sequence again, which is 10, 7, 10, 7, back to 7 on the top E, 10, 7 on the B, 9 on the G, 10, 7 on the B, 9, 7 on the G, 7 on the B, 9, 7 on the G, 9 on the D, 9, 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 10, 7, and then resolve to 10 or 8. So you can really hear that Lydian. Especially it's that F sharp giving it that real quality of the Lydian mode. So now, this is where I think it starts to become very cool. Obviously, this lick I'm playing is just one little statement, and we will look at some licks later on that I like to call combination licks. They utilise several different scales in one position, which is a slightly more advanced approach as opposed to just taking one shape and shifting it. So if I was playing over that chord, I could now play that lick, etc., and now move it up a fifth. That gives me another sound, and I could also move it up by a second. And I've created 3 totally different sounding ideas based around exactly the same lick. So you can see I'm now getting treble for my money. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate the sound of the D major pentatonic scale against the C major 7th chord, which will basically result in our Lydian scale. So remember, whenever you see a major 7th chord and you want to treat it as Lydian, just simply play your favourite major pentatonic licks up by a whole tone, but make sure you resolve to a chord tone or add the C note so that the lick goes home. Okay, now we're going to take a look at another pentatonic substitution idea, which it works over both the Ionian and the Mixolydian mode, but personally I really don't like the sound of this over the Ionian mode. Whereas C major 7th, if we treat it as the 1 chord of C, we've got major pentatonics from the 5th degree and also the 4th degree, which would be F major pentatonic. Our F major pentatonic is situated up here. It's 10 and 13 on the bottom E, 10, 12 on the A, 10, 12 on the D, 10, 12 on the G, 10, 13 on the B, 10, 13 on the top E. But if I start, that sounded like D minor pentatonic, but if I start from the F, there's your F major pentatonic. Okay, if I play that over a C major 7th chord, it's a bit unresolved sounding. It's got F, which is a 4th, it's got D, which is a 2nd, it's got C, which is the root, it's got A, which is the 6th, and it's got G, which is the 5th. But that 4th is a little bit it's a little bit up in the air, that note. It would sound nicer with the E note in it instead. But when we play this scale over the top of the C dominant 7th chord, which is Mixolydian, which basically means that C is the 5 chord of the F scale, we get a much different sound, because F is still the 4th. We've got the D note, we've got the C note, the A note, and the G note, but it just has a slightly better flavour when it's played against the dominant 7th chord as opposed to the major 7th chord. It doesn't sit quite as well. Okay, so our little lick, you've got the position of the scale. Hopefully by now you're learning the formula, so I'm just going to play the lick for you, which was... And you can hear that that works over that. Okay, not quite as well, but it sounds really nice if you play over the Mixolydian chord, over the 5 chord. May resolve to C though, or E would sound really nice as it's quite a small jump, as that is a chord tone. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate over a backing track our little musical phrase, our little lick that we've been playing throughout, and I'm going to play this over a C major 7th chord, and then I'm going to play it over a C dominant 7th chord, so you can hear how we can substitute our C major pentatonic with an F major pentatonic over any Ionian or Mixolydian chords. Okay, now we're going to take a look at our final major chord. We've done major 7ths. We've touched on the dominant 7th ever so slightly, but all of these remaining phrases that I'm looking at, these remaining major pentatonic ideas, are basically Mixolydian options, and there's quite a few for us to get through. It seems to be we can look at the 5 chord in many different ways depending on the type of sounds that we want to create. I know a lot of us play over the 5 chord anyway when we just simply use minor pentatonic when we're playing blues, but there's some really nice little moves that you can do just simply shifting ever so slightly, but again playing exactly the same lick, and it will imply different flavours over Mixolydian. The first one that we're going to do is we're playing over C9 or a C dominant seventh, whatever chord of your choice. But we're going to play the C minor pentatonic. Now, in theory, this shouldn't work, but in blues, we tend to play the minor third, which would be E flat, but bend it slightly sharp. That's a real common move in blues and rock music. So this is based around the C minor pentatonic, but every time I land on an E flat, I'll bend it slightly sharp so you get that kind of mixolydian blues flavour. The pentatonic scale we're playing is C minor pentatonic, starting from the 8th fret. It's exactly the same shape, so 8, 11, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 11, 8, 11. And here's our little lick. You should have the formula by now. I went back to the root note that time, so you can hear that over the dominant chord. Very, very bluesy sounding. Just make sure that you're bending those minor thirds ever so slightly sharp to hint at the major third. Okay, quite a straightforward mixolydian one, that one. Obviously that will work over minor chords, but we'll touch on those in a minute. So I'm now going to demonstrate our little musical lick for you over the top of a C dominant chord, and this is C minor pentatonic over the C dominant 7th chord. Right, here comes our next pentatonic idea, and this is still kind of based around the C minor pentatonic, but we're taking full advantage of that idea that I just suggested to you over the C dominant 7th chord, which was where we bend slightly sharp. Instead of bending slightly sharp, we're just going to substitute our minor thirds for major thirds. So instead of playing E flats, we're going to play E naturals. So this is basically a dominant pentatonic, really. It's got a root, a major third, a 4th, a 5th, a flat 7, and a root. So you can hear that over the dominant chord. Sounds really nice over the top of our dominant chord. So exactly the same pentatonic scale, just moved one note a semitone. So when we play our little lick, instead of going, we're actually going to go. Okay, so the notes are 8 to 10 on the D, 9 on the G, then 10, 9 on the G, 10, 8 on the D string, and then 9, 10 on the on the G, and then 8, 11 on the B, and then 8 on the top E, and then 11, 8 on the B, 10 on the G, and then we sequence down. We play 12, 8 on the E, and then 11 and 8 on the B string, 8 on the top E, 11 and 8 on the B, then we play 10 on the G, and then 11, 8, 10, 9 on the G string, and then 8 on the B, 10, 9 on the G, and then 10 on the D string. So far we've got this. And we finish off by just playing 10, 9 on the G, 10, 8 on the D, 10, 8 on the A, and then 12, 8, 12 on the bottom E string. So just have a listen to that slowly. There's our dominant. C See, structurally it's pretty much the same lick, but we've just substituted one note, and you can hear how that's really breathed a lot of life into the sound of that little phrase over that chord. It's got a very, very strong mixolydian or dominant pull to it. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate our little phrase for you now over the top of our C dominant chord. So this is the C minor pentatonic, but we've substituted the minor third with the major third. So call it a mixolydian or dominant pentatonic. Okay, we're going to move on now to a couple of other ideas based around the mixolydian scale, and this first one is a really, really interesting idea. I really, really like the sound of this, which is where we basically take the G minor pentatonic scale, or the B flat major, however you want to look at it. But I prefer to look at it as a G minor pentatonic scale, but instead of playing the minor seventh, which is the note of F, we simply flatten that by a semitone to the note of E. So our shape one of our G minor pentatonic would be this: 15, 18, 15, 17, 14, 17, and then 15, 17, 15, 17, 15, 18. So it's a totally different sound. I'm hearing that in relationship to that chord. So G is the fifth, B flat is the dominant seventh, then we've got C, which is the root, D is the nine, E is the major third, and then we're back to G. So you can see it's got a real pull towards that chord. Okay, so it's literally the same G minor pentatonic scale, but we just lowered that note. So here's our little lick. Sounds like this. Okay, you can hear that against that C dominant chord. So it's exactly the same formula that we've been playing. The lick hasn't changed. We've just simply moved it up to the G minor position at the 15th fret and flattened all the F notes down to E's. Very, very straightforward. So the formula for that, if you're ever playing over the top of a dominant chord, we can play minor pentatonic. We can play dominant pentatonic. And then we can also go up a fifth and play a minor pentatonic a fifth above, but just drop the minor seventh down to a sixth, play the same lick. And you can hear straight away, it's really, really starting to give us the sound of the mixolydian mode, and I'm essentially playing the same lick. I could play, or I could go, and I could also go, same lick, it's just been altered to fit within that new scale. I've got 3 times the value for my one little blues lick, as you will see later on. Okay, the next demonstration is going to be the G minor pentatonic scale with a sixth instead of a minor seventh over the top of our C dominant chord. So the formula, simply shift up a minor pentatonic a fifth from the root of any dominant chord. Okay, here's a slightly unusual choice, and this isn't really that diatonic, but it just works really, really well. If I'm looking at that C dominant chord, I can actually play an E minor pentatonic which at the moment sounds pretty ghastly, but if I just take the 5th of E minor and flatten it to a flat 5, I get this sound. So that's an E minor pentatonic with a flat 5 in it against our dominant chord. So the way I'd look at that is basically play a minor pentatonic, a major third above the root of our chosen chord, and just flatten the 5th down to a flat 5. So C up a major third gives me E minor, flatten the 5s. It's quite simple really when you start to put it. I would suggest writing down all of these little formulas that I'm giving you so you can quick reference them and practice them over the top of a chord. So our little lick is going to be exactly the same, except whenever we play a B note or a 5th, it's going to be a flat 5. So the lick will sound like this. And listen to that. It sounds great over the top of that chord. Lovely intervals there. You can really hear the Mixolydian tonality. E being the 3rd of C, G being the 5th, A is a 6th, but then we've got the B flat in there, that flat 5, which actually acts as our dominant 7th. Then we've got D, which is the 9, back to E, which is the 3rd. So I will now demonstrate for you the E minor pentatonic with a flat 5 instead of a 5, and this is over the top of our C dominant chord. So the little formula for this is to take your dominant chord and play a minor pentatonic a third above and flatten the 5th. Here we go. Okay, here's our next little Mixolydian treat for you. And this is another one that isn't strictly that diatonic. It's got little hints of sort of being ever so slightly outside. You could play it over an altered chord. Sound quite nice if that's the final chord on your turnaround. And also, even when you're improvising, you know, just regular blues licks over C minor pentatonic, or C minor pentatonic with a major third. Or if you're playing G minor pentatonic with the 7 flattened down to the 6th. So it all sounds nice. Or if you're playing E minor pentatonic with a flat 5 instead of a 5. All of these options, all of them are pentatonic, and I'm just playing the same. I've played the same shape, just a couple that I've, you know, shifted a couple of notes here and there, but essentially it's the same framework, so it's real familiar territory for you to be working with. The next idea is a little bit bizarre. And have you ever listened to a record and listened to, say, someone like Robin Ford or Larry Carlton, and all of a sudden they just throw in one of those licks and you think, where on earth did you get those notes from? And then you kind of think, well, maybe I'm just filling in the gaps here, and it just sounds like chromatic madness, just doesn't resemble any of the kind of slick or hip-sounding lines that these guys play. I guarantee that this little pentatonic trick will add a little bit of sauciness to any blues or any kind of, well, yeah, blues or rock, and it'll give it just a slight sort of tinge of being a little bit jazz, make you sound very, very clever. The idea, if I'm playing a dominant C dominant chord, is to play a C minor pentatonic scale, but we take the 3rd and we raise it to a major third, so minor third to major third, and then we don't actually start from the root, we start from the flattened 2nd instead. So the fingering for this scale is basically we're that little minor third that you normally play on the bottom string, you're moving up a semitone. So in theory, you're going. That kind of thing, but I'm not going to play the C notes, so it makes it sound a little more angular. So we've got D flat, flat 9, so that's 9th fret bottom E, 12th fret bottom E, then normal territory, 8 to 10 on the A string, 8 to 11 on the D string, 9 and 10 on the G, 8 and 11 on the B, and then 9 and 12 on the top E. Lovely sound. And we can do exactly the same thing with our lick. Obviously, I'm going to alter notes slightly. Instead of playing the 10th fret of the D, I'm going to play the 11th fret. Instead of playing the 8th fret G, I'm going to play the 9th fret. Instead of playing the 8th fret top E, I'm going to play the 9th fret. So just watch it, and also I'm going to play the 9th fret of the bottom E. So it's kind of simple. If you just study the shape, I'll play it for you slowly so you can see. Then just play the same lick formula that we've looked at, and just keep it within the framework of that scale. So here's the lick slowly for you to practice along with. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that now against the click with our backing chord. So this is another Mixolydian idea. We're getting lots of Mixolydian ones now. And this one is basically play a minor pentatonic from the root, from the same root as our chord, but raise the root note up a semitone to a flat second and raise your minor third up a semitone to a major third. And this will give you a nice sort of slight Eastern, almost kind of Phrygian dominant sound to your pentatonic soloing. And it's a great little shift that you can just do around your regular minor pentatonic scale, or your regular sounding Mixolydian pentatonic. So it's just a very simple little shift up, playing the same little minor third shape on the top strings. Okay, now we're going to take a look at our last little Mixolydian phrase, which is kind of heading back more into the kind of diatonic way of thinking, and also just sticking to a regular pentatonic as opposed to altering any notes. You remember earlier on that we looked at the G minor pentatonic scale, and we just took the flat 7 of G, which was F, and lowered it a semitone down to a 6th, which was E, which in relationship to C is a third. We can also look at that G minor pentatonic as just being B flat major as well. And without altering any notes, we get this series of intervals. We get G, which in relationship to C is a 5th, B flat is the flat 7, C is the root, D is the 2nd, F is the 4th, and then we're back to G. So the way I like to look at that is if I'm playing a dominant chord, I just play a major pentatonic scale a whole tone lower, and that will give me that kind of Mixolydian sound as well. So here's our little phrase that we've been working on. Again, I'm just showing you how we can just take one simple lick and just by you know, using a different pentatonic over the top of the same static chord, the whole flavour of the lick changes, and so you're getting a lot for your money's worth out of one lick. Obviously, you know, this isn't the way that we would perform with this technique. We would use it in a much more musical way, which we'll be looking at when we take a look at some licks later on. Anyway, here's the little phrase. It's 15, 17 on the D, 15 on the G, then 17, 15 on the G, 17, 15 on the D, and then 15, 17 on the G, 15, 16 on the G, sorry, 15, 18 on the G, and then 15 on the top E, 18 to 15 on the B, and then 17 on the G. So that whole first section. So you can hear that. It sounds very, very different. Then we come down the scale. Okay, and that little figure, 18, 15, 18, 15 from the E to the B, and then 15 on the E, 18, 15 on the B, 17 on the G, so then 18, 15 on the B, and then 17, 15 on the G, then 15 on the B, 17, 15 on the G, and then 17 on the D, and then just run down the scale from the G string and resolve to the B flat note. So you can hear how that works really, really nicely. Against our dominant chord. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that little phrase for you. As I said before, it's the same phrase that we've been looking at throughout all of these examples of demonstrating the scale so far. So I'm going to play a B flat major pentatonic, which is a whole tone lower than the chord we are playing over, and the chord is a C dominant chord. Okay, for our next chord, this one's a little bit different, and this doesn't come from the major scale. This comes from a scale known as the altered scale, which is actually from the melodic minor. And sometimes it's nice to outline the altered scale over the top of chords such as that, the 7 sharp 9, or we have sharp 5s with flat 9s. Sharp 9s. There's lots and lots of different variations on altered chords. Basically, an altered chord adds more tension to the sound. We keep the root, the 3rd and the flat 7 the same, but we raise or lower the 5th and the 9th. The most famous altered chord, as I'd already mentioned, is the 7 sharp 9. But it's possible to outline the sound of the altered scale by using a minor pentatonic, believe it or not. The altered scale is quite a difficult scale to work with, and it seems to be something that eludes a lot of guitar players, and they also find quite daunting that, you know, to go and now learn a whole new set of modes based around the melodic minor. The formula is really, really simple. Whenever you see an altered chord, simply play a minor pentatonic, a minor 3rd above, so that in the case of C, our 7 sharp 9 chord, we've got E flat, which is the sharp 2, so the sharp 9, 7 sharp 9. We've got F sharp, which we can see as being a sharp 4 or a flat 5. We've then got this A flat or G sharp note, which we can see as being the sharp 5. Then we've got B flat, which is our dominant or flat 7. And then we've got to our note of D flat, which in relationship to C, that's a semitone, so that's a flat 9. So we've got flat 9, sharp 9s, we've got a lot of altered notes in there. Going to play the same lick, again, just to demonstrate, taking the same phrase, moving it around, getting a lot of mileage. We're now we've been able to get Mixolydian and Lydian and Ionian phrases out of this lick. We're now going to be able to get an altered scale phrase out of this little lick. So I'll just play the lick for you slowly. I won't worry talking you through it. Hopefully you should have it by now. I've spoken through it enough times. But we're starting, our first note is going to be starting on the 11th fret of the D string. So here's the phrase. It's a very tense sound. I would at some point resolve to the C note to bring it home. It's definitely not, you know, the best way for you to outline the altered scale, but it's a starting point. And, you know, if you don't want to go learning a whole bunch of new scales, we can apply our pentatonic scale to, you know, give us the sound. It would work really nice if you're playing like a turnaround in a blues. You can resolves quite nicely. It will give you those outside qualities. Okay, I'm now going to demonstrate the little lick for you against the click and our backing chord. So this is how we phrase the altered scale using a minor pentatonic, our straightforward, simple 5 notes. And the formula is a minor pentatonic, a minor third above our chosen altered chord. Okay, now it's the time of the minor chord, and we're going to take a look at the 3 minor chords and 3 minor modes from the major scale. Still sticking with our same little phrase. We've done quite a lot with this lick so far. As I've already said to you, this isn't really a particularly good lick. It's just an idea, you know, a sequence and a little figure based around the scale. We will look at some slightly hipper and more musical sounding phrases, but as I've already said a gazillion times, you know, the whole purpose of this lick is just to show you how you can take one phrase and move it to different pentatonics over the top of any, you know, chosen chord, if you like. Instead of learning and having to deal with lots of 3-note per string patterns or major scale patterns, maybe you already know these scales, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to know them, you're quite happy just sticking with your pentatonics. Anyway, we're going to take a look now at the C minor chord, C minor 7th. We can treat that chord as the 2 chord, so a Dorian chord. We can treat it as a 3 chord, as a Phrygian chord, and we can treat it as the 6th chord, the Aeolian chord. And for all of those, we can use the root position C minor pentatonic. So the little phrase again. Sounds very, very familiar over the top of that chord. So I will now demonstrate that lick to tempo against a C minor 7th chord. So that's just the C minor pentatonic, shape number 1, starting from the 8th fret. Okay, the next example is very, very, very Dorian. If you are still having a bit of trouble remembering the modes, flick back to an earlier section on this DVD when I played through each mode starting from C, and you can hear the characteristics. This is by far my most favourite minor mode, and it's the Dorian mode. It's a very hip sounding mode. It has that 6th. Really, really lovely sound, and it also has the 9th as well in the top there. Really nice sounding mode over minor 7th chords. You can, as you probably guessed, outline the sound of this mode by using a minor pentatonic. If you think about it, Dorian is based from the 2nd degree of the major scale. A whole tone higher, we've got another minor chord built from the 3rd degree, and we can build a minor pentatonic from that. So in the case of C Dorian, that would be a D minor pentatonic. So we're going to simply take any phrases that we play and move them up a whole tone. This is quite a hard scale to use when you're playing a D minor pentatonic over a C minor chord, and sometimes it can sound a little bit like you're playing a wrong scale. It's very much in the phrasing, and I really struggled with this scale when I first started. So this idea of playing this one lick isn't probably the best approach when you're looking at this particular scale, but at least it gives you a little bit of an idea and gives you a feeling of how the mode should sound. So we're going to start from the 10th fret of the D, and here's the lick. 3. And you can hear that works really nicely. If I get it was both pentatonics together, and it's got a really fresh sound to it. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that little lick to tempo, which is the D minor pentatonic scale played against a C minor 7th chord. So the formula for this is simply from the root of any chosen minor chord to make it sound Dorian, just simply shift your minor pentatonic up by a whole tone. Okay, the next mode that we're going to look at with our pentatonic scale is the Phrygian mode. And for the Phrygian mode, think of C as being the 3rd chord of A flat. We've got B flat as the 2 chord, so we can play a minor pentatonic from B flat. So whereas with Dorian, we simply shifted our pentatonic up a whole tone, for Phrygian, we simply shift it down a whole tone. So whereas before we'd be playing D minor pentatonic over C, we're now actually going to play B flat minor pentatonic against the C minor. Now this has got a very dark sound to it. It has that note in it, which is the note of D flat. And if you look at D flat in relationship to the C minor 7th chord, it's the flat 2, so that's where we get our Phrygian sound. So B flat, that's a minor 7. D flat, that's your flat 2. Then we've got E flat, which is our minor 3rd. Okay, so it's a strong note. We've got F, which is our 4th. And then we've got the note of A flat as well, which is, that's a flat 6. And then we've got our B flat again, which is the minor 7th. So our little lick is going to start from the 6th fret of the D string, exactly the same formula. I will resolve this note, this lick to C, so it will sound like this. 3, 4. You can really hear the Phrygian sound. You can hear that. Really gives you the Phrygian tonality. So I'm going to demonstrate the lick now, as we have done so far, and this is basically the B flat minor pentatonic being played against our minor 7th chord. So the little rule for Phrygian, you want to make your pentatonic sound Phrygian, you're shredding away using the C minor pentatonic over the C minor 7th chord. Want to give it a little bit of that kind of dark, mystical vibe to it. Just drop the pentatonic down by a whole tone and play a B flat minor, but make sure you resolve to C, otherwise it will sound too out and too up in the air. Okay, our next example is a nice friendly example, and this works really well over the top of Dorian and Aeolian ideas. Guitarists such as Eric Johnson and Carlos Santana use this quite a lot. This worked really nice in the major sense, and it is probably the easiest out of all of the substitutions to actually get your head around. And that is quite simply just to play a minor pentatonic a fifth above. So if I'm playing C minor pentatonic, then I will play my little licks based around the G minor pentatonic scale. If we look at G minor pentatonic in relationship to C, fifth is G, B flat minor seventh, C is the root, D is a second, so that's a nice hip note, F is the fourth, and then we're back to G. So I'm going to transpose our little lick, and I'm just going to move it up a fifth, and I'm going to start it on the 15th fret of the D string. So here we go, 3. If I put the two together, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. You can really hear how I've, got double my money again for the same lick. And whereas the lick before sounded a little more predictable because of the fact it was C minor pentatonic, just by shifting it up a fifth, it's just got some new qualities to it, especially having that ninth or second, the note of D in there sounds really fresh. So the formula for that, any Aeolian or any Dorian chord, if you want to spice it up ever so slightly, simply take your minor pentatonic licks and just move them all up the fingerboard by a fifth. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate that technique for you with our lick against the click. So this is G minor pentatonic played against our C minor seventh chord. Okay, this is our final minor chord example, and this particular idea is a pentatonic that can be used over the top of either Phrygian or Aeolian chords. The reason why it can be used over both of these chords is that the fact that they both include the flat sixth note. So, the basic idea, if we're playing in the key of C minor, as we have been, we simply play a minor pentatonic a fourth above, which is going to be F minor pentatonic. So the notes, F is the fourth, then we've got A flat, which is the flat sixth. That's the note that really gives it its Aeolian or Phrygian kind of tonality. Then we've got B flat, flat seven, C is the root, and then E flat is the minor third. So it's a little bit up in the air with the fact that it's got the fourth and the sixth there, but I would very much use it that kind of thing. See, I came up a minor pentatonic, C minor, very standard kind of pentatonic phrasing, but then there we go, there's F minor. Back into your C minor. So, like I said, it's a little bit up in the air sounding, but it definitely gives you that flat six back down to the fifth. So our little phrase that we've been practicing, but it will give you the flavour of this pentatonic, should be started at the 15th fret, and I'll play it slowly so you can see it. 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that lick now with the click, and you can play along. Lick with the click, that rhymed. You can play along with me and use the lick as a way of just getting the flavour of the pentatonic over the top of the chord. So if you want to outline that flat six of Phrygian or Aeolian, simply play a minor pentatonic a fourth above the chosen chord. So C minor 7th, play an F minor pentatonic. Here we go. Okay, we're nearing the end of our demonstration of how these pentatonics sound when we substitute them for other types of pentatonics. And we're nearing the end of our little musical phrases use. I know you're probably getting sick and tired of hearing it, but at least having one familiar lick that you repeat really helps you understand, you know, the intervals and how the sounds will change. Obviously, you won't solo in this way. I'd never play a lick and, you know, keep repeating it parrot fashion. Sometimes you get away with it, but, you know, I'd want to be a little bit more experimental with the technique. But the mode that we're going to look at now is the dreaded Locrian mode, and the Locrian mode is a favourite for jazz guitarists and jazz musicians, and also for metal bands as well. Bands like Slayer love to use the Locrian mode. It's probably something that you won't use a hell of a lot if you're playing, you know, minor 2-5-1s. You may slip into it over that, but it's more of a harmonic minor thing when you play a 2-5-1 in that way. I found myself using Locrian every so often. I might have that as a passing chord down to something like that, and it's kind of nice to have something that maybe just doesn't sound quite as, you know, scale-based. I'm just going to run up the Locrian mode. So it is possible for us to use minor pentatonics to outline Locrian. So C Locrian, okay, which is basically coming from the D flat major scale. If we drop down by a whole tone, we get the 6th degree of D flat, which is B flat. And remember, we can build minor pentatonics off all 3 minor chords and major pentatonics off all 3 major chords. So we can actually play a B flat minor pentatonic over our C minor 7 flat 5 chord. And the intervals, starting from the 6th fret, we've got B flat, which is the flat 7. We've got D flat, which is a flat 2. We've got E flat, which is our minor 3rd. We've got F, which is our 4th. And then we've got A flat, which is our flat 6th. So that pentatonic, you can hear that it pulls out certain tonalities that outline the Locrian mode, namely that flat 2 note. So our little lick is just, again, based around the same pentatonic shape, and it's going to be starting from the 6th fret of the D. So I'll play it slowly so you can see the positions. Here we go. 3, 4. Obviously, when you hear me demonstrate that against the chord with the click, it will make a little more sense. When I'm playing it in that way, you would, you know, be forgiven for mistaking it for a D flat major lick, but you've got to remember we're hearing it in relationship to that chord. Okay, so it's a very slightly different sound. So our first Locrian idea is simply play a minor pentatonic scale a whole tone lower than our any chosen minor 7 flat 5 chord. So a little demonstration for you against the click and the backing guitar chord. C minor 7 flat 5, but I'm going to play a B flat minor pentatonic and play a little lick. Okay, here's our next Locrian example, and if we're treating C minor 7 flat 5 as chord 7 of D flat, chord 2 will be E flat, and we can build a minor pentatonic from the 2nd degree. So E flat minor pentatonic starting from the 11th fret of the bottom E. Here are the intervals in relationship to C. E flat, which is a minor 3rd, Then we have a G flat, which is our flat 5. We have A flat, which is our flat 6th note. Then we have B flat, which is our flat 7. And then we have D flat, which is our flat 2. So that's a very, very strong sounding Locrian. Really outlines the scale nicely. With our little lick, we shall be starting from the 11th fret of the D string, so it sounds like this. Again, that lick will really take on the role of the Locrian mode when you hear it being played together, which is what I'm going to demonstrate for you now. So here's the next example, which is another way of outlining the Locrian mode. Simply play a minor pentatonic a tone and a half higher than our chosen chord. So starting from the minor third. So minor 7 flat 5, C. We're going to play our little musical phrase around the E flat minor pentatonic. Here it is with the backing guitar and the click. Okay, you're hanging in there. This is our last little bit of substitution before we get into the fun stuff and learn some licks instead of just practicing up and down scales. But this is, you know, really, really valid in terms of experimenting with the scale. One phrase, we're not letting, you know, the licks get in the way. We're experimenting with the sounds, seeing which ones we like. Some of them you might not even like the sound of and would rather, you know, steer clear of them. But I promise there's going to be some fun stuff for you in a second. Now, we've used the minor pentatonics from the 6th degree and the 2nd degree of A flat, of D flat, should I say. Remember, this is because C is the 7th degree of D flat. So we had the B flat minor, which is the 6th, E flat minor, which is the 2. So the 3 chord of the D flat minor scale is F, and we can build a pentatonic from that particular degree. So here's F minor pentatonic, which is starting at the 13th fret, and here are the notes or the intervals in relationship to C. So F is our 4th. Okay, now we've got our A flat note, which is our flat 6th. B flat is the flat 7. C, that's our root. And then we've got our E flat note, which is a minor third. So okay, that outlines it quite nicely as well. It's not quite as out as some of the other scales that we, the other pentatonics, especially when we use the E flat pentatonic. You know, that was very out. So our little phrase is going to be starting on the 13th fret of the D string. And I'll play it slowly just so you can watch it. Like I said, you should have this little lick down by now. Here we go. Okay, the formula for that is a minor pentatonic above, played a 4th above any chosen minor 7 flat 5 chord. So once again, that lick, probably when I played it on its own there, it doesn't really sound particularly Locrian, but it will now when I play it against the chord. So for this little demonstration, this is the F minor pentatonic scale being played against a C minor 7 flat 5 chord. Okay, we've come quite a long way and we've looked at various different substitution ideas. There are other pentatonics that you can play. I've got some information in one particular book that I like to study from, which goes on about building pentatonic scales from the diminished half-whole scale. Too much information for this DVD, I think, but you know, these ones I think that I've given you today are probably the most useful ones for you to experiment with. And like I said, a couple of them aren't really that, you know, they maybe don't sound quite as nice. Some of them sound great, and you know, hopefully you want to put them into your playing all the time. We've only looked at one lick so far, but that's just to show you, you know, how the intervallic structure of these scales sounds once you play it against, or a different scale against the same chord. It also shows you how you can get mileage out of one lick, and you might play one pentatonic lick, sorry, in 3 different keys over the same chord, and you know, get 3 times the amount of value for one lick. The other thing that we've done throughout is we've been using exactly the same minor pentatonic shape, which again isn't probably the most musical way of looking at things. Just to give you a little example, say for instance, I mentioned earlier on that, you know, a really, really hip and a really cool approach is to play a minor pentatonic a 5th above a chord. Say I'm playing C minor here, and I'm playing my minor pentatonic, C minor, and I want to take it someplace else, want to make it sound a little fresher. Instead of moving a massive intervallic jump like this, to get to my G minor pentatonic, which is the pentatonic a 5th above, I would look at playing a pentatonic within the same area as the C minor scale I'm playing. Remember at the beginning of the DVD, we looked at all of the pentatonics in relationship to caged chords. Well, there's my nearest G root note, so that's a C minor shape. So I would play shape number 3 of the G minor pentatonic scale. There's G minor, there's C minor, G minor, C minor. You see, I can run seamlessly through the 2. So you could, and that was mixing the 2 scales up, which is a little more of a musical way of approaching it, as opposed to, you know, jumping way up here and then jumping all the way back. Okay, before we move on to the fun stuff and look at some licks, and I give you a little demonstration of this in kind of a real life working situation against a backing track, I'd just like to give you a little bit of a formula recap, and I would suggest that you get your pen and paper at the ready. We're going to start off with the Ionian mode. So if I'm playing C Ionian, I can play a major pentatonic from the root of the chord. I can play a major pentatonic a 5th above. And I can also play a major pentatonic a 4th above, which isn't really the nicest sounding one, but it will still work. It's a little too ambiguous. Now, if I treat C as a 2 chord and I'm playing Dorian, I can play a minor pentatonic over the top of the same name. I can then play a minor pentatonic up a whole tone. If I play D minor pentatonic, it's got that A note in it, which is the 6th, and that's the strong pull to Dorian. So I can be playing C minor, D minor, C minor, D minor, C minor. So I can slide in between those. And also I can play a minor pentatonic a 5th above as well, which would be G minor pentatonic. So from there, that was all 3. You really have some fun with it, but I'm looking at the scales in close proximity to the chord. Okay, Phrygian, the little cheats for Phrygian. Play a minor pentatonic from the root again. You can then drop the minor pentatonic down by a whole tone, so that would be B flat over the top of C. Okay, the minor 3rd of B flat is that D flat note, which is the flat to a C, so that's how you get your Phrygian sound. And we can also play a minor pentatonic a fourth above, so that would be F minor, because that's got that note in it, which is the A flat note, which is our flat sixth. Okay, Lydian, major pentatonic, works over major 7th, major 13th chords. We can play C major pentatonic. We can also play G major pentatonic. Sounds really nice. And we can also play D major pentatonic, so play a pentatonic a whole tone above. Or you can look at it as being a minor pentatonic, a semitone lower, it's exactly the same. But here it is a major pentatonic above, so this is D major pentatonic over C. Gives you a nice Lydian flavour. Okay, Mixolydian, this was the big one. If we look at the kind of standard pentatonics that you would use first of all, that would probably be a better starting place before looking at the altered ones. So C dominant pentatonic, C dominant chord, we can play C major pentatonic over that. That works quite nicely. We can also play the B flat major pentatonic as well. That will also work really well. It's got a really nice sound to it. Okay, some good sound. Sounds a little bit, it kind of outlines the sound of the 7th, because we've got that B flat note in there, so it's giving us the flat 7, which is a very Mixolydian flavour. Okay, the other one that we can also play over the top of that is going to be the F major pentatonic, and that will also work quite nicely. So okay, mix that up with the B flat. Get some really nice sounds out of that. Then we can move on and look at some of these other slightly more unusual pentatonics that you can use over Mixolydian. You could, for one, you can play a minor pentatonic from the same root and bend the third slightly sharp. You can eliminate the minor third and play a major third, so that's how we get okay, another nice little one to play is a G minor pentatonic, but flatten the 7 to a 6. So, okay, that's very cool. The other one was if you take an E minor pentatonic, but substitute the 5th for a flat 5th. It's a really nice flavour to that. Okay, the other one that we could also try was from the same root note. It's a minor pentatonic, but we don't play the root. We move up a semitone and play a flat 2, and we don't play minor third. We move that up a semitone and play a major third. So basically, when you play C minor pentatonic, you do that, minor third, just play it a semitone higher. And that. Okay, it's got a little bit of an Eastern-y vibe to it, but it kind of gives you that Phrygian dominant sort of flavour. Okay, our next chord would be the 6th chord. So this will be how we highlight Aeolian. We can use the minor pentatonic of the same name. We can also play a minor pentatonic a 4th above, so that would be our F minor pentatonic. So okay, that's got a nice sound. And we can also play our G minor pentatonic as well, which is a 5th above. That works really nice. And finally, if we want to outline Locrian, our minor 7 flat 5 chord, we play a minor pentatonic, a whole tone lower, or we play a minor pentatonic, a minor third higher, or we play a minor pentatonic, a fourth higher. The only other one that I added was the altered scale. So if you have your turnaround and you've got our 5 chord before we lead back to the 1 chord, we can actually play a minor pentatonic, a minor third above, and it will give you a little bit of a kind of altered flavour. Make sure you write that little list down of formulas, because once you start improvising with this, it's really, really easy to start thinking to yourself, okay, up a whole tone, down a whole tone, up a fifth, up a fourth, etc., to give you these desired effects. Now we're going to move on and look at some licks. Here comes the fun part. Okay, for this next section of the DVD, I'm going to take a look at a little bit more of a practical approach, and probably more of a real-life approach to using the technique of pentatonic substitution. So far, I've really given you a little bit of a shortcut to try and help you imply the sound of the modes by just using really effectively just one shape of the minor pentatonic, which would be shape number 1, playing a lick, shifting it to another pentatonic over the top of the same key, but obviously changing the sound of the lick. But in a real-life situation, we want to try and be maybe a little bit more musical with our substitutions, and also be able to link different scales together to create more complex sounds. So, with that in mind, I looked at different ways that I could teach this to you, and I thought that the best way would be to put together a little tune or a little backing track and have a jam around with a few ideas. And so before we take a look at a few licks and I play you out with our little solo, I thought we should take a look at the chords that are in the progression and see what modes we can actually imply over the top. Okay, the first section, if you want the verse, nice little simple chord part, just E major, and that's changing to an E7 with a sus4. So that's actually the 2nd fret of the A and the 2nd fret of the G. And then we have a C major 7th, but we have the G in the root. It's almost like an E chord, but being played down on the bottom E, the A and the D string, 3rd fret E and A and 2nd fret D. I also take my first finger away to so that I sound the open D basically. So that's kind of giving you a major 9 sort of sound. So we've got the last chord is a D major chord, but it simply has the F sharp in the bass. Okay, the next section, we then move to C sharp minor, so a little key change there. And then we have A major. It's more of an A add 9, but I'm implying Lydian. We'll talk about the modes in a second. I'm implying Lydian, so what I'm actually doing here is just shifting some thirds up and down on the D and the G string that are diatonic to Lydian. So I play the 7th fret D and the 6th fret of the G with open A, open B and E. Move that shape up a whole tone to play 9 on the D and 8 on the G. Then play 9 on the G and 11 on the D. Move that up a whole tone, so it's 13 and 11. Back down. So we have this. Quite a nice little chord part there. Back to C sharp minor. And then we drop down to a little F sharp dominant, and we end up playing a 13 with a sus4 as well, which that's quite an awkward stretch, that chord. 2nd fret of the bottom E, 2nd fret D, and then the 4th fret of the G and the top E. Oh, sorry, the G and the B. You can include the top E if you want, and then back to a regular F sharp 7th chord, which is 2nd fret of the D, G and B, and I hammer on to the 3rd fret of the G, so you get that kind of minor to major sound, which we can create with some of the dominant pentatonics we looked at. Okay, then we're, from there we go to this chord, which is a G sharp minor 9, still diatonic, and then we get rid of the root note. So we're playing, it's an E chord, it's got an F sharp in it, which makes it a 9, and it's got the note of B flat. A is a 4, B flat is a sharp 4, so it's a Lydian sound that we're creating. Or B flat, A sharp, I should say. So those 2 chords, then just take the root away. Really, really nice, really melodic and musical change. Then we have a little rundown, C sharp minor. Then we put the B in the bass. Okay, now we put the B flat in the bass, or the A sharp. That gives us a minor 7 flat 5. And then we have this E flat 7 sharp 9 chord, a flat 9. So that is 6 on the A string, 5 on the D, 6 on the G, 7 on the B, and then drop the B down to the 5th. And then we're back to our G sharp to E. And we finish this section off by playing a little G major 9 at the end. So this is the chords for the first section. Now our C. Back to E. C. Now D, C sharp minor, minor 7. Now A Lydian. Back to C sharp again. F sharp dominance. G sharp minor 9. With the E. Now we have the C sharp again. Put the B in the bass. A sharp minor 7 flat 5. E flat 7 sharp 9 to flat 9. And then back to our G sharp minor. E in the bass. And then the final time we resolve to that G major 9 chord. Now there's only one other alteration in the progression which occurs right at the very end, which is this bizarre voicing of a C sharp minor chord. It's kind of slightly unusual voicing. It's got root and 5th, and then having the A in there, C sharp in relationship to A, that's a flat 6th, and then we got a B in there, which is a minor 7th, and then we have the note of E, which is the minor 3rd, and then we can simply take the C sharp away and just play an A root. Really lovely, rich sounding chords. There's a few other little chord variations that you'll hear on the backing track. Over the C chord in the first verse, while the acoustic is playing that little progression, I outline that with a C major 13 on the electric. And I believe there's another little picky part that I did. I think it was something like that, just really layering up the sounds, trying to give it that nice kind of spacious Lydian sort of feel to that chord. And on the C sharp minor as well, sometimes I play that which I'm just playing the 9th fret of the E string and the 9th fret of the D and the G, sometimes bar across the top 2 strings at the 7th fret. Okay, before you panic too much about the chord progression that I've just presented to you, don't worry too much about it. You probably won't find songs with that many changes in chords within a regular classic rock or top 40 covers band. But what I've tried to do here is be influenced by certain guitar players, maybe someone like Brett Garside, what I'd like to call one of the more intelligent rock guitar players, who plays over slightly more advanced changes and will imply more advanced harmony. And for those of you that have never played these types of scales or implied these types of scales, at least it gives you an opportunity to hear them over certain chords and then make the choice whether you want to add them to your playing or not. Also, if you're working in a band as well and certain tunes come up, it enables you to negotiate these chord changes. Anyway, let's take a look at each one of the chords or each one of the sections and look at the scales and look at the modes that we're trying to imply. Okay, the first section then, as I said, was E to E7. And then it was C major 7th. Now over the E7, we're actually implying the mode of mixolydian. Now there's a couple of ways that we can do that, or more than a couple, as you've seen earlier on from the examples we looked at in the previous sections of this DVD. But I've chosen to stick mainly around the B minor pentatonic scale and just lower the 7th to the 6th. So over that chord, I'm playing around this scale, giving it a nice mixolydian dominant sound. We then change to this chord, which is the chord of C major 7th, and I'm going to stay on the B minor, except I'm going to get rid of that G sharp note because that'll sound pretty bad. I'm just going to play a regular B minor pentatonic. Now if I play B minor pentatonic over the C major 7th chord, it will imply the sound of Lydian. So that's kind of nice that we can use the same scale because we can work around. You can hear me playing through the change. Be a lot more obvious when you hear me against the backing track. The next chord after the C major 7th was simply that D over F sharp, and we can stay B minor pentatonic over that as well because it acts as D major pentatonic. Okay, the next section we're heading into C sharp minor, and for that I'm going to use the C sharp minor pentatonic because it's nice. But I'm also going to mix in notes from the D sharp minor pentatonic. Really nice sound. I could also, over the top of that, use the G sharp minor pentatonic as well. Okay, over the A chord, the A Lydian is the mode we're implying here. So that was Dorian to now Lydian. And for A Lydian, I'm going to use G sharp minor pentatonic. So again, there's some similarity there. If we were playing you can hear if I land on that A note, you get the Lydian quality as well. So I can use that same pentatonic scale there of G sharp. Okay, after that we play our next change, which was the F sharp dominant. And we've got a few choices over this. I'm actually, for the most part, playing a minor pentatonic, a major 3rd above. So I'd be playing from the G sharp, I'll be playing A sharp, and I will be flattening the 5th, or replacing the 5th with the flat 5. I really like the sounds of that. Really, really nice sounding scale over that dominant chord. Okay, for the next section, we're playing the G sharp minor. And for that, G sharp minor pentatonic, I am going to use it. Sounds very, very nice. and then we add the E note to the chord. And for that, I can stick with the same pentatonic scale. Something a little more musical would be if I slipped into C sharp minor or E major pentatonic here. The other option would be if I play over the G sharp minor. I'm not really that much of a fan of playing the pentatonic a fourth above, which we looked at earlier, which would be C sharp minor. Okay, it's a little, I don't know, unresolved sounding because it's got the flat sixth in there. It will give you the sound of Aeolian, which is the mode that we're trying to imply over the top of this chord. But I'd prefer to use a pentatonic a fifth above, which is the D sharp, and then that D sharp over the E really gives us the sound of the E Lydian. So that would be my choice to play there, play the D sharp pentatonic over both of those. Here comes the fun bit. I like this bit, I think this is quite cool. We play C sharp minor to C sharp minor over B, and when I'm looking at that chord, I'm treating it as chord 2 of the B major scale. So I'm choosing G sharp minor. I like the sound of the pentatonic played a fifth above the minor chord. I'd play that also over that C sharp minor with the B in the bass. Now when we play our A sharp minor 7 flat 5, at that point I swap to C sharp minor pentatonic, same area, and then we have E flat 7 sharp 9 to flat 9, so that's altered, and at that point I play F sharp minor or G flat, well, yeah, G flat minor pentatonic, and that gives us the sound of playing out the altered scale. So there's a good choice of scales there. Oh, incidentally, there's one last scale that we should be aware of, and that's at the end, that little... I think for that section, I'll just use C sharp minor pentatonic, and over the A chord, stick to the same pentatonic. It's got quite a nice fresh sound, that, playing a major pentatonic a fifth above, because of course C sharp minor is the same as E major. Okay, now we're going to take a look at just a few little snippets and ideas of some of the things that I might try to attempt when playing over this mammoth chord outing. And the first thing that I'm going to look at is that little change between the chords of E7 and C major 7th. Over the E7th, I should have mentioned in the previous section as well, I will also, over that, as well as playing that B minor pentatonic with the sixth, I'll also include the E major pentatonic scale as well, and even jump up and use minor, and then add the major thirds. So there's a lot of options that I will play over that first chord. But I really like the sound of coming in very, very simple figure like that, starting off major pentatonic, sliding in 11 on the D, 9 on the G, 11 to 9 on the D, and then sliding 11 up to 13 on the G, playing 12 on the B, back down to 11, don't slide into 10 as I just did, and then play 9, and then I just do this little slide down the B minor pentatonic. I am including that G note, a little bit of a cheat there, but I don't have to, which I'm playing over over that C chord. Really like the sound of that. It's really giving me the Lydian tone, and it's really, you know, quite angular and a little unresolved. The next phrase is using shape 2 of the B minor pentatonic, and I'm playing around that shape basically, which I'm flattening. Instead of just playing the top half of shape number 2, like so, I'm playing the A note. Well, I'm taking the A note and I'm dropping it down to G sharp. Which again gives me a really, really lovely Mixolydian tone. And then I can take the B minor pentatonic and slide up to shape 2, which is over that, the C Lydian. And then that puts me in position to play C sharp minor pentatonic over the next section, which is going to be Dorian. Okay, this next lick that I'm going to look at is, I think this is a really useful lick, and it's a useful concept when using pentatonic substitution, and you should just take this idea and try and put it over the top of the other modes, basing it around the relevant pentatonic scales. This is very, very Eric Johnson, Frank Gambale sounding phrase. It's over the C sharp Dorian section. And basically, I run up the C sharp minor pentatonic up as far as the G string, so 9, 12, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 11. Now we swap over and play D sharp minor pentatonic, but it's shape number 5, so I'm playing 8, 11, and then 9, 11, and 9, 11. And then we shift up to shape number 4 of the G sharp minor pentatonic. So that's 14, 11, 14, 12, 13, 12, sorry, 13, 11, 13, 11, and then back into C sharp minor pentatonic, or whichever way you want to come back down it. So, that's a really nice sounding line to play over the top of any minor Dorian chord. That's utilising all 3 of the minor pentatonics. Just one other little fun lick as well that you might want to try if you're this way inclined. Play a C sharp minor pentatonic, but then I'm playing shape number 1, but then you can tap shape number 5 of the G sharp minor pentatonic. Kind of a Greg Howe inspired little lick. So we tap 16, pull off 12, pull off 9. Tap 14 on the E, pull off 9. Hammer 12 on the B. Tap 16, pull off 14, pull off 9 on the B. 14 on the B, pull off 9, and then 11 on the G. Tap 16, pull off 11, pull off 9. And then tap on the 13th fret there of the G string, so far. Hammering on 11 on the D, then tap 16, pull off 11, pull off 9. Tap 13, pull off 9. Hammer on to 11 on the A. Tap on the 16th fret, pull off 11, pull off 9. Tap 14, pull off 9. Hammer on the E on the bottom string and finish it off, so you get so that's a really, really crazy cool sound that you can achieve by using 2 relative pentatonics over the top of a minor chord. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of little Dorian phrases that I like to play. This is the main one. I basically see shape 1 of the minor pentatonic, but then also see shape 5 of the D sharp minor pentatonic. I'm seeing the two together. I really like these kind of phrases. If I bend the sixth up to the flat 7, so bend 11 up to 12. Little phrases like that got a real sort of nice jazzy, almost fusion-esque sort of sound to them. I bend 11 up to 12 on the B. Now play 9 to 11 on the B, 9 on the G, and then 11 and 9 on the D string, so the first part. And then I got that little mixture of both D sharp and C sharp minor pentatonic. Little fusiony sounding lick there, where I'm doing a little hammer on of 8 to 9 on the D, and pull off, and then 11 on the A, back to 8 on the D, and 11 on the D. So you get kind of nice little groove to it if you almost swing the sound of the lick as well. Sounds really, really cool. And then over the next chord, the A chord, I'm then in position to play through G sharp minor pentatonic over the A Lydian section. Sounds really nice. And then when I get to this point, I'll then cross over into C sharp minor pentatonic, which is actually working as a major pentatonic as well. So over that, and then and we're back there into our C sharp minor. Now this next lick is a kind of unusual little phrase, and it's quite hard to execute. But basically, I stole it. All right, it's not mine. It's borrowed from an American guitar player called Paul Gilbert, who plays quite a lot of wide stretch pentatonics. And I saw him play this lick and thought it was an incredibly cool idea. The basic principle behind it is that you stretch between two shapes at a time. So if I'm in the key of C sharp, I'm going to play a little pattern like that where I'm crossing over, well, in total 3 shapes. I start off by playing 14, 12, 9, and then 11 on the, 12 on the B, 12, and then 12, 9, 12, 9. So then we change positions. We're playing part of shape 1 and also shape 5. So that was shape 2 and shape 1, and now we got shape 1, shape 5. So now we play 12, 9, 7 on the E, and 9 on the B string, and then 9, 7, 9, 7. So now keep moving that across those two positions. So 12, 9, 7, 9 on the G, back to B, 9, 7, 9, 6 on the G, and then 11, 9, 6 on the G, 9 on the D, 9, 6 on the G, 9, 6 on the D, 11, 9 on the D, 6 on the D, 9 on the A, 9 on the D, 6 on the D, 9, 7 on the A, 11, 9, 7 on the E, sorry, on the A, 9 on the E, 9, 7 on the A, 9, 7 on the bottom E. So slowly. quite a nice idea. But we're going to add a little twist to it so that it doesn't sound too normal. We wouldn't want that, would we? Let's take the C sharp minor pentatonic and we'll shift it up by a whole tone. Now remember what I said in the tutorial earlier when we were just shifting the same lick around and changing the sound by playing it over a different scale over the top of the chords, but still basing it around, you know, the same pentatonic shape, if you like. I'm just going to take that lick and I'm going to shift it up by a whole tone now. So I'm actually playing D sharp minor pentatonic. So my fret positions, I'm going to be playing 16, 14 and 11 on the top E, 14 on the B, and then 14, 11 on the B, on the E, and then 14, 11 on the B string. So, and then just shift down like so. So if I put that together over the top of the chord, you can hear it's got a certain kind of Dorian quality to it, which is really nice. And I'm just using exactly the same lick that I'd play around C sharp minor pentatonic and just shifting it up by a whole tone. Now this is my one of my favourite little phrases from the whole track. Again, all these ideas are kind of improvised, but after playing through and coming up with the backing track, they've kind of settled in and started to stick more like, you know, proper phrases, if you like, as opposed to licks. And over the F sharp dominant, I play this little lick. Now the reason why I'm ending on that note is that winds me up for my G sharp minor. So, and you can hear the two there. Sounds really nice, that little line. So I'm doing a little hammer on and pull off here. 11, 12, 11, 9 on the E. And then 11 and 9 on the B, and then 9, 8, 6 on the G, and then 8 on the D, 6 on the D, 7 to 6 on the A, back up, 7, 6, 8 on the D, and then resolve down to the 6th fret of the A over the top of the G sharp. These licks will really come to life when you start to hear them over the top of the backing track. The other section that's, well, the next section that occurs that we should take a look at would be over the G sharp minor chord. And as I've already said about this section, I'd be sticking a lot around G sharp minor pentatonic just because it sounds really musical and really melodic. And I would also add in some ideas based around the D sharp minor pentatonic. The other thing I like to do with the D sharp over it is to play phrases that are quite sort of very fluid. Now it's weird me just kind of noodling up and down that pentatonic when you hear that in context of that G sharp. It's kind of got a nice open sort of fresh sound about it. And again, I was using that similar idea to that Paul Gilbert lick there, where I'm stretching over a few shapes. Also, just a little point of interest that my picking fingers, or the fingers on my picking hand, seem to creep in there, and I almost end up kind of barring across two strings at once, so that you get this, which adds another kind of angular feel to the lick, as opposed to it being very linear, just ascending and descending a scale. I'm able to, you know, to actually bar across the two strings. And also, here's another little fun lick. I sometimes do this, well, I do this lick quite a lot, which is another example of putting, you know, more than one shape together. And I can do that in D sharp, which over the G chord. And I'm just stretching between shapes 5, which are fret numbers 9, 11, 9, 11, and fret number 14 on the B and the E, which is shape number 1. And we can actually do like a nice sort of fluid kind of legato. And I just simply moved up to the next group of notes within the pentatonic scale. If we go back to the Dorian chord, actually, just come up with another lick on the spot, so we really are now totally improvising. And that would, if you want to add like a really sort of fast flurry of notes, try this little phrase, which I'll take the C sharp minor pentatonic, which is that, but then I'll move that up a whole tone and play the D sharp. And obviously D sharp minor pentatonic over C sharp gives us our Dorian sound. So if I put those two scales together in these wide stretch, you know, very fluid kind of legato lines, they can sound quite effective. You almost get like a sheet of notes. Okay, the second time round the progression, I've included a couple of little faster ideas, still trying to keep it nice and melodic, but there's a couple of little faster runs in there. The first one is over the E chord in the first progression, E to C. And this lick is kind of unusual, and again, it's another kind of borrowed Paul Gilbert idea. And I'm playing across shape number 5 of E major pentatonic. But then I actually include some notes from shape number 5 of E minor pentatonic. So, and that's kind of unusual because you've got the G sharp giving us the major or the dominant tonality, but we've also got the minor third. As you can hear, those two notes a semitone apart. It's quite a nasty sound, but when you play it fast, that's quite a nice sounding phrase as well. I'm literally playing 11 on the D, on the A, 9, 12 on the D, 9 on the G, 12, 9 on the D. So. And then we play 12 to 9 on the G, and then to 12 on the D, so 9 on the G, 12 on the G, and then up to 9 on the B, so little double pick on the B string at the 12th, pull off to 9, 12 on the G, and then 9 on the B, 12 on the B, slide up to 15 on the B, so now we're into shape 1 of the minor pentatonic. And we could move into B minor pentatonic. Sound really nice over the top of the E chord. And then that kind of sets me up for the C Lydian chord, and I can play, this is quite an unusual technique for pentatonic players. Most pentatonic players seem to stick within boxes, and the licks can after a while sound very stale and very stereotypical. And here's a really cool little trick that you can try to break out of the box, and it works even better if you then, you know, imply a different mode by using a different pentatonic over the top of a chosen chord. So I'm going to take B minor pentatonic here, and I'm going to play quite far across the neck using a series of 3-note per string ideas. Well, 2 notes on one string and 3 notes on the other. I'm going to be playing the 7th fret at the bottom E up to the 10th fret, and then 7, 9, 12 on the A string, Now, by playing the A note there on the A string, it's as opposed to playing it there on the D string. So instead of going like that, we get like that. And then I'm simply going to take that group of notes and shift it in octaves. So then we do 9 and 12 on the D, 9, 11, 14 on the B, 12, 15 on the B, 12, 14 and 17 on the top E. So now our pentatonic has really grown. And then you can actually, if you're into tapping, you could tap some extra notes. I'm going to tap the B note, so I'm going to add that on the 19th fret. So I now get... And then I'll tap it again on the 14th fret G. And then on the, the 16th fret G, and then the 14th fret A. So... But I'm playing that little idea over the top of that chord, over the top of a C major 13 chord. So it's got a very, you know, kind of different sound over the top of that chord as opposed to being over the top of the B minor chord. One last little idea, and this one also is a kind of unusual, and sounds even more unusual when you use the pentatonic substitution idea. I really like to, with my particular style of playing, I like to sweep pick quite a lot, which means that I play a lot of down and up strokes. It enables me to play patterns across strings as opposed to having to play things that are very linear, and it works really well with arpeggios. The minor 7th arpeggio is really, really closely related to the minor pentatonic scale. There's only one note difference. So I was messing around with my pentatonics one evening and discovered that you could actually come up with some nice wide interval ideas if you sweep across a pentatonic scale. Now, just to make things even more bizarre, over the top of the G sharp minor chord, or that, and the E, so that's G sharp Aeolian to E Lydian, I'm going to be playing the D minor, the D sharp minor pentatonic scale. But I can actually play this lick, play 14 on the bottom E, and then we play 11 to 16 on the A string, so a little bit of a stretch there. So, and then we're going to play 13 on the D, and then we're going to play 11 and stretch up here to 16. So then we're going to play 14 on the B, 11 on the top E, and 16 on the top E string. So you're stretching across, again, two pentatonic shapes, part of shape 1 and part of shape 2. But the fact that we're, we're stretching out positions gives it a slightly more angular sound. So over the top of that chord, really nice, unusual sort of sound. Okay, that's pretty much it from me on this Power Pentatonics DVD. There's a lot of information for you to take in here, and I do feel for you, because I can remember the first time that my guitar teacher said, okay, when you're playing over this chord, you can play this pentatonic. And I went, yeah, okay, I grasped that. And then he went, oh, you can play this one, or you can play that one. I was like, you know, how far does this theory go? It is a real minefield. But I think the best thing for you to do when you're practicing is to learn the formulas. When you're playing over a minor chord, simply play a pentatonic a fifth above. It instantly makes you sound like Carlos Santana or Eric Johnson. If you want to sound Lydian, then play a minor pentatonic a semitone down from the root of the chord you're playing over. If you want to sound all jazz fusion and make yourself sound like Robin Ford, you're playing over the top of a minor chord, simply play a pentatonic a whole tone above. It gives you the Dorian flavour. If you all of a sudden find yourself confronted with an altered chord for some reason, maybe you're playing a jazz tune and you don't want to worry about playing altered or melodic minor scale fingerings, simply play a minor pentatonic from the minor third of the chord. These formulas are foolproof, and that's what I base a lot of my playing from. I have little formulas. I look at a chord, I'll play off of a certain note, I'll play an arpeggio, I'll play a minor pentatonic. The most important thing, though, is to not forget about phrasing. Don't just run up and down these scales. Remember, these notes and these scales are the way that you communicate with your audience, so use it as a language and make sure that it means something and that it's going somewhere. As for the track, well, those are my choices of scales that I like to play, and you might want to approach the chords in a completely different way, so feel free to. You are well within your right to do so. So learn some of the licks that I've demonstrated and then go away and have some fun on your own with it and come up with your own ideas. Okay, well, I'm pretty much done here, so all that it leaves for me to do is to say goodbye and good luck. And happy pentatonicking, if that's a word. Enjoy yourself, and I hope that with some scales that you've already known, you can breathe a little bit of new life into your guitar playing. Anyway, that's it from me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Lick Library DVD.